All right, so we're gonna get started. Welcome everyone. My name is Patricia Lozano and I'm the Executive Director of Early Edge California. And I welcome you to our webinar today. We have two amazing experts today that are gonna share strategies on how to read books with infants and toddlers. We have a very interesting and amazing presentation, and we'll have some time at the end for questions and comments. You will be muted during the presentation and the Q&A section, and your video is going to be off, but you'll have opportunities to provide comments via the chat or the Q&A. We have with us today Dr. Carola Oliva Olson from California State University, Channel Islands, and Ana Arambula from the Language Learning Project from Fresno Unified District, and also she works with Dr. Carola at the California State University, Channel Islands. We're very excited to have them here today, and I'm gonna just give Carola the opportunity to begin and share this amazing information with all of you.
Thank you, Patricia, from both of us. We thank you for inviting us again. We greatly appreciate and value your dedication and hard work in advocating for the rights of children and super diverse families. We thank also Early Edge California for the amazing work and support for all families in the state of California. What you've accomplished is really incredible, and we're very fortunate to have your leadership. So today we're coming back with more support in implementing the POLE strategies. This time we're focusing on infants and toddlers. And as we shared in the first seminar, the POLE strategies were developed by nationally known dual language learning experts like Dr. Linda Espinosa, Whit Hayslip, very special person Elizabeth Magruder, and myself. And the purpose for this was to create a way to implement practical and proven strategies for children who are learning in more than one language in settings where there might be a match in the languages spoken by the children and the languages spoken by the adults or not. So, you know, the strategies really allow children to have full access and effective participation in the daily experiences and learning opportunities. And it's not dependent on their level of English language proficiency to be able to participate, engage. But now we know that there are certain things that we must and can do so that all teachers, regardless of the languages they speak, can support them to participate and learn all of the things that teachers are planning for, or that the teaching that spontaneously happens throughout the day. So we are also, I want to mention that also it is an important aspect of the POLE strategies to support teachers in supporting the children and their families in developing bilingualism. And this is a great asset for our state, for our local communities, and we know all of the advantages that that brings, and we feel honored that our state truly values this as something that our children and families bring. So with that, today we're going to focus on the some of the areas or components of the POLE strategies and relate them to 4 suggestions that we have so that you can all engage in different book reading strategies or through online modalities, or if you're already working with children, with them and their families. And we want to emphasize that what we're presenting today is really focused on promoting well-being and emotional health. So this is, if you are interested, we have been receiving a lot of inquiries about how to get access to some of these trainings and the full idea of what POL is and how it works. And we're trying to figure out how to give you that information. Maybe in the next seminar, we'll have it ready for you.
And so several weeks of the current crisis and quarantine have passed, and we continue in an environment of concern that affects our children, adults, and ourselves. Children are very diverse, including the languages that they speak in their families, cultural practices, and their interests. We know that there are 60% of bilingual children, and so it is very important that we relate using different modalities to continue to support children and families during this time. The level of stress and worry continues to increase. We must start looking for resources to share with families so that it helps balance their emotions, give them ideas that are logical so that families can do them at home. And thinking also about the suggestions that we offer to families and taking advantage of and use the necessary vocabulary to describe and identify new emotions and be able to communicate with those young infants and toddlers. Today, we are going to present 4 suggestions to teach new vocabulary and at the same time support the emotional health of children, families, and ourselves. Many of you are caring for children of essential workers, and others of you are at home trying to find creative and fun interactive activities to share with families via different modalities at the time. Today we focus on 4 recommendations that are very intentionally planned and that include rhythm and movement, enrichment activities, and the use of rich vocabulary and the use of gestures. All of these recommendations support and promote the social emotional development of children with their vocabulary during these times and all times. And so the first recommendation that we have is to focus on expanding vocabulary related to emotional health. If you remember in our previous seminar, we presented this same topic, but with preschoolers, and today we dedicate the seminar specifically with the lens around infants and toddlers. And so this is a great book that I really enjoy. It talks about different feelings. And so as we mentioned earlier, during this time, it's important to foster social and emotional development with infants and toddlers, especially establishing those positive and trusting relationships with them and their families as well. And so with infants and toddlers, we know that it's important to always identify and label those emotions that they are feeling at the moment and comforting them. And so with this book, I would like to show you a few pages so that you can see how rich it is in language with infants and toddlers. And also it talks about emotions. Sometimes I feel sad, but now I feel happy. And so it talks a lot about, different emotions, the sad and the happy, which are so important, especially during this time when our infants and toddlers are at home with other family members because they're not able to come into our program. So how do we continue to support their emotional health being where they're currently at with their family members? And sometimes my friend Duty feels scared, but now he feels brave. And so if you notice with this book, it also introduces rich vocabulary that we normally don't use with infants and toddlers, but knowing how important it is to bathe them with rich vocabulary words and how that connects with their emotional well-being is critical at all times. Sometimes my friend Tiny feels angry, and angry we know is a big word, but now he feels pleased. And so this is a great reading to share with families during this time. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you go out and purchase this book, but a lot of these resources that we're going to offer and share with you today, you can download and share the links with families via internet as well. And so that is something that we wanted to share with you as well to support the children's emotional well-being. And so for example, if a child is crying because their mom left, we can say to the child something such as, I see you're sad because your mom left. You're crying, you have tears on your cheeks, but you know your mom always comes back for you. I have seen when your mom returns, you look at her and she always gives you a smile, and that makes you so happy. And so again, labeling those emotions with our infants and toddlers is critical all the time. And so we want to be able to offer all of you these recommendations so that you can continue supporting young children and families throughout the day, depending on the different modalities that you are using currently to connect with them if they're not attending your program.
And I'd like to show you that these, some of the books that we're offering today are also available in other languages. We offered a seminar earlier that showed, that was all in Spanish. And one of the things that we did is have a list of those books for anyone who's interested in purchasing them, finding them, or looking for similar ones, or looking for the links online where the books are narrated by sometimes the publishers or even the authors. And those are all free and of public access. Now there's, for those other languages that are not Spanish, we found many different links to resources and ways to access them that we'll also provide at the end of this webinar.
And so another great book that I want to share with you is this book that showcases, again, several emotions that are so important to label with infants and toddlers, again, especially during these times when they might be spending time with other family members. And we know that relationships are the base of the attachment theory, which says that the child's early experiences with their caregiver is key to establishing a love relationship with adults. These experiences have a profound, long-lasting effect that shapes and creates a safe haven of closeness and a sense of security with that infant and toddler and those adults who are with them. The child's brain is shaped by these experiences with his or her caregiver and is responsible for their social and emotional development, communication, relationship to grow and learn and develop, we know is the best way. And so with this book, I want to show you a few pages as well that again really talks and connects with emotions of infants and toddlers. Look at the happy baby. Can you make a happy face? And so again, that dialogue with the infant and toddler, asking and connecting with them to see if they, how they are feeling. Find the happy baby. And so here is an opportunity for the adult also to engage in that dialogue with the child, but also it allows an opportunity for the adult. For example, if the child points to the baby that's making a silly face, that gives the adult an opportunity to engage in conversation with that child and might say something as simple as, oh, that's a silly baby. Can you make a silly face? And so again, exchanging those dialogues with those infants and toddlers and using gestures, which are very, very important with all children, but we know that with infants and toddlers, they are key as well. And not only that, but sharing this kind of information with our families to label their child's emotions when they're feeling sad, when they're feeling happy, when they're making silly faces. This is such a great way to help parents continue that connection with their infant and toddler at home during these times as well.
So here we go into recommendation number 2, and that is to use repetitive phrases. Oh, I see that we wrote the word in Spanish and not in English. So phrases with rhythm and movement. Did anyone catch that? I just got that. So our mistake. But that's one of the things that you have when you're bilingual, right? You use what you know in one language and put it in the other and you try to make it work. Anyway, so books that include repeated words and phrases promote a sense of rhythm. And this is an excellent source or resource that helps us stimulate children's oral language development. So scientific research has shown that babies grasp the musical characteristics of language. And this is then an important thing to take into account because this is the prime time for us to engage in lots of dialogue and introduce children to different kinds of songs and chants and different talks, and expose the child to lots of language, because it's a time when they're paying attention to the sounds of language and gravitating to the particular parts of language that get repeated. And so the music, vocabulary, repetition of those new words with movement, hands, body, and objects, all of that helps us provoke a more dynamic and efficient language experience. Many of you are currently sharing videos with your families and trying very hard to build a trusting relationship and connecting with the infants and toddlers. And it might be very hard to find some of these books, or for families to have them there. And we're not asking anyone to spend money or to go out, especially. But one thing that we can share with them is chants or songs. And so what we've done here is shown how you might be able to record yourselves singing, creating a song, sharing maybe the story first, videotaping yourselves, and then singing something that you create, and having the parents receive that video and doing that at home. So you might be very familiar with this. Let's see if you can see. You might be very familiar with the story book of Peekaboo, right? And Peekaboo, Peekaboo, Peekaboo. And one of the songs that we thought of just quickly was using a melody, a rhythm that we already knew from another song, and applied it here. So we said, Peekaboo, Peekaboo, who do you see? Who do you see? I see mommy looking at me. I see daddy looking at me. So there are lots of ways that you can, and different songs that you can think of, that you can apply the same concept. This is not something that we made up. This is, a lot of teachers already do this, but it's a wonderful method, and especially a wonderful idea now to share with families when they don't have all of the materials and things that we have right here.
And so with what Dr. Carola just explained right now, something that we can use that enhances and requires repetitive phrases and enrichment activity is, I put together this Peekaboo board with some materials that I had at home based on some of my children's favorite things to do, objects when they were younger. And so we talk a lot about how important it is to sing with children. And so the example that Dr. Carola just shared with you all about the Peekaboo, we can also do the same thing using something similar and sharing with parents. So for example, using the child's name, Daniel, Daniel, what do you see? I see a ball looking at me. And so you can see here that I didn't necessarily have to go out and purchase any materials. I basically just used some markers that I had at home and drew my own picture based on something that my son really enjoys, which is sports. And so I thought of a ball. Another example that I want to share here is I cut out some bananas, a picture of bananas from newspaper, because that's both of my children's favorite fruit. And so it is very important, you know, that when we are sharing these recommendations with our families, that they don't require them to go out and purchase any materials. They can simply put some things together to support that language and that singing based on some of their child's interests, some of the things, objects that they really enjoy doing throughout the day. And it engages them with that repetitive language, connecting them, using their names, using other family members' names, which is a great way to continue to support young children's oral language development.
Okay, so here we come to recommendation number 3. And this one has to do with following the child's interest and curiosity. Now, with infants and toddlers, it's really important to demonstrate that we have a trusting relationship with the families. And as soon as they see that, then they trust us. So in developing that relationship and also in sharing with the families the importance of language development at this critical stage, we focus on demonstrating, practicing, and sharing the how-to. So how do we follow the child's interest? How do we spark the child's curiosity? Well, as we see the child doing something, right? For example, the child picks up a stuffed animal, and then we might say something like, oh, you have the cat in your hand, you're touching its face. And then waiting to see, this is the critical part, right? You're all very knowledgeable of this part, but sometimes sharing with families is the important part, and it's a perfect time now to do so, because we are able to share some of these things in email, in video, etc. So once we see what the child, once we say something, it's important to wait and see what how the child reacts. So if a child babbles or looks even more attentively at the item, we might add a little bit more and say, I noticed that the face is very soft and the ears are also very soft. I wonder what else is soft. So we're sort of building or knitting a conversation, and the child in its own way, his or her own way, is giving us feedback of being part of that conversation, whether it's just looking at something, paying more attention to it, making sounds, or repeating what we're saying in their own way. This is really important because it's how we describe to families what this looks like. One way that we found productive is to say to parents that it's, as you describe what you're doing, whether you're cooking or running different chores in the house, you're describing what you are doing as much as you're describing what the child is doing. And it feels or it sounds like being a reporter or someone sharing, for example, about a soccer match, right? So that's sort of the role that you're taking, and it makes it should be fun for the families as well. It will be awkward, of course, at the beginning, but this is a prime time to do so, and it's an important element to share with the families. So for example, if the dad is bathing the child, then they can say something as simple as, I'm pouring water on your head. The water feels warm. It's falling on your face, your ears, your arms and legs. And so giving them examples and letting them try it out as well and share with you what that feels like and some of the things that they've done.
So here I have this sensory see, touch, and feel book, which has a lot of different textures in it. But one thing that I wanted to point out here, and you can see on your screen where the little girl is has the drum on her lap. You know, children love to make different noises, right? And so some of them, again, are at home with their family members. But one activity that parents can do with their child is using pots and pans, right? And serving utensils to make different noises. It's a fun and interactive way for parents to engage, even in that dialogue with the infant. Oh, you're making a loud noise. Can you make a soft noise? And then the parent can also model what that might be. And so it allows the parent and the child an opportunity to dialogue. And we call a dance, where the adult does something, the child follows, and it's a back and forth dance with each other, which is a great opportunity for us adults to engage in with our young infants and toddlers. So this is an activity that is simple. You know, most parents have some pots and pans at home. And so this is an activity that you can share with parents that doesn't require them to go out and purchase any materials, which we want to also keep in mind as well, that during these times, a lot of our parents are limited with a lot of their resources. And so we want to be very mindful that the activities or recommendations that we're sharing with them to support the learning of their child at home, that they're something that is attainable, something that they are able to do. We want to set them up for success with their infants and toddlers. And so this is one great book. It doesn't necessarily mean that you go out and purchase it, but we did want to show you a lot of rich books that do connect with a lot of emotion and that allow us an opportunity to engage in rich dialogue with our infants and toddlers.
One idea that we had also was using socks, clean socks, different sizes of all the members in the family, and then having different things inside that are safe, and using scrunchies. And for the young children to be able to manipulate, to touch, to move, to play with, always with supervision, of course. So yes, go ahead.
So here we have, I put together this sensory board that you can also share this activity with your families, where I just, selected a couple of materials that I had at my house to put together to show you that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going out and purchasing these expensive items to continue to support our young children's development, but instead it might be a lot of these materials that we already have at home. For example, this is a bag of potato chips. I washed it, I cut it, and it makes a lot of like a noisy, crunchy noise, a soft sock, a piece of Velcro, a piece of paper, ribbon, and these stickers that are also very soft. And so what I did with this box, it's a box that I had left over from Christmas. And so what I did also was I cut the bottom piece of it, because with infants and toddlers, if they're crawling and if we place it downward like this, they're able to crawl in it and still be able to explore all these different textures. And it allows us, the adult, to engage in those rich conversations, as Dr. Carola just gave us an example of the soft. The child picks up a soft cat, and what else is soft? And so the sock is also soft. And so it allows us an opportunity to connect with that child and continue to expand on their language development with them all. And again, we know that with infants and toddlers, it can be something as simple as an empty box where they sit inside and the adults or siblings push them around the house, and they love that. And so that's also an activity that parents don't have to go out and purchase anything that to make the activity fun and interactive with that infant. And if there's multiple children in there, they can, do different things around the house with cardboard boxes, which we know and teachers really, really enjoy recyclable items. And so just using our imagination to share with families the great things that they can do with recyclable items is such a great way to still stay connected with them.
So here we have a video from the Ericsson Institute, where the caregiver is engaging in through a story with his child and paying particular attention to attributes. So let's take a look.
Yeah. The cow says, moo. That's the sound the cow makes. Yes, I like feeling it too, because it's so soft. You're going to turn the page? Yes, soft. Yes, I know, and you can also feel it. Let's stick your finger and feel around it. Yeah. Yes, soft. Soft. Yeah, I touched it. Oh, yes, I like the way it feels. Let's see what's on the other page. It's a dog. His name is Bob. Let's see what Bob's paw feels like. Wow, what does it feel? It feels rough. Yes, it's a little rough. That's Bob the dog. There you go. Oh, look at Mr. Duck. It's fluffy and soft. Duck, you see his eyes? Yes, it's the yellow duck. Yes, that's his wing. He uses his wing to help him when he's in the water. Yes, his eye, just like a duck. We're through. We're gonna try again.
I just love watching that one over and over. And so here we come to the last recommendation, which has to do with engaging families in during these challenging times, and in ways that we haven't really done before. And sometimes it feels hard when you just are making videos and sending them out, but you're not interacting. So finding ways for not just leaving or sending the videos, but being able to synchronously at the same time, I can't say it right now, synchronously be able to participate and meet with them. Now it's creating that warmth during that time to connect while being so far away. And there are lots of books that help us build and establish that, and to reconnect and reestablish that connection. So we've created a long list of books in many languages that we'd like to share. And I've seen many of your comments and questions about where to find those. And you'll be able, after today's session, you'll be able to access that list in both from the webinar in Spanish and the one from today.
And so this belly button book, again, is an example that we wanted to share with you today. And it's a book, but parents, a great activity or that you can provide with parents to is simply asking and engaging with their child and asking, for example, where are Daniel's eyes? And asking, seeing if the child, pointing to their eyes and stuff like that. And so here is the baby's eyes are under her hat. Where is Daniel's mouth? Behind the cup. And so you'll notice that I changed the name of the book, so that it has that connection with my child. And so that is also a recommendation that we can share with parents, that there's these books, but even without books, we can still help that child make that connection with themselves, with their body parts, during all routines, during diapering, during meal times, while they're bathing, when they're indoors, outdoors, just really explaining what the child is doing when they're dialoguing with each other, whatever the child is seeing and exploring with. The whole concept or idea is that adults engage in dialogue with infants and toddlers, even when they don't have the language. It is very important that we continue to share these recommendations and these best practices with our parents, to continue to dialogue with their child, to continue to support their oral language development. And we know that with infants and toddlers, it's so meaningful when we do it in their home language. And so this is a prime time for parents to bathe their young child in their home language, when dialoguing with them during daily routines, when reading books, even when books aren't in the child's home language. It can be simply describing the images on the books and recreating and narrating their own stories based on what they're seeing is so important as well.
I wanted to share something about these books that you probably recognize and you've used a lot before. The nice thing about the Worst Spot books series is that something happens, there's a problem, right? And it needs to get resolved. And so there's an interest in trying to figure out how the mama finds Spot, the puppy. So it's nice to find these kinds of stories that have, it builds momentum. Even with younger children, as young as young children, the children that you are working with. The other part is that families have a really, sometimes they have a hard time with books that don't have a plot because they're not sure how to follow if they don't know how to read or if the book is in a different language. But when you have books that are simple, the illustration is clear and it can be described easily, then that's something we can tell the families to do, to focus on describing the parts of each page and not so much on what is written and not to worry about with what the text says.
And so here I have another great book that I wanted to share with all of you. It's called I Love Us. And it's a short book, and I'm going to read the book to you so that you can see what a beautiful story this has. It says, I love how we make pancakes for breakfast and messes for lunch. I love how we draw together and fill our world with color. And this is something that we're seeing right now in a lot of the media, where children and families are going out there and using chalk to share different messages with the community. I love how we watch clouds and planes and birds fly by and try to guess where they're going. So this is a great opportunity for parents to dialogue with their child based on what they're seeing, and as a family as well. I love how we help each other feel better and how hugs are the best medicine. I love how we celebrate together and that we always have cake. I love how we build the tallest towers and help each other reach the very, very top. I love how we visit new places and make new friends wherever we go. I love how we read books every day and learn new things together. I love how we kiss goodnight and snuggle each other tight. I love us. And there's a picture, a mirror where the family can see each other. And so what I went ahead and did after I found this rich book, I sat down with my husband and my children and I said, we're gonna make a book about us. And so as a family, we made a book together. And so I gave each of us one page and we were all responsible, or the task was to draw something that we enjoyed doing as a family. And I'm going to be honest with all of you, had it not been for the time that we're in right now, I probably would have not made this book. But I'm grateful that I did, because this is something that I will forever cherish, that we did as a family. And so we enjoy time with the family when we go on bike rides. My oldest son said, I love sitting down and watching movies with my family, and he drew us all. We love sports, so my husband drew us playing basketball in our backyard. And my very youngest drew us in a weather balloon, and he said, this is all of us in a weather balloon up in the air to see the view of the city from the sky. And he loves playing basketball as well, and so he drew himself. And so this is such a great, rich activity that we can share with our families, where they can really sit down and slow down and think about what are some things that we love to do together as a family, and those things that we really cherish with each other. And so I wanted to share this idea with you all as well.
And here's another example. This is something I'm going to translate. It was done in Spanish because we speak Spanish at home. And when my daughter was a little bit over 2, we created this, which is the values for our family. And we identified the things that we felt were important for the family. And then at that time, of course, she didn't write, but she pretended to write. And so she did this, and she included her dogs. Her dogs were very important for her. But this is something that unites us. It's something that stays, and it's something that is valuable and for the child, right? For the entire family, but especially for the child. So these are times where doing things and helping parents think about ideas that can reflect unity, being together, supporting each other are very important. So we've come to the end, and we have more books that we wanted to use, and we just couldn't fit it all. So we've put the list, and we've included in the list that you'll be able to access more than the ones that we have shared with you today. Actually, I forgot. We have one video that would like to share if we have time. What do you think, Patricia?
Well, we have a few questions that people have been posting. So
Leave these for them to access after?
Yes,
okay,
I think so. So we have a little bit more time for people to ask questions.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I was so inspired and by you two and all your amazing ideas. And I've been reading the chat, and everybody agrees with me. Thank you so much. So I'm going to start with the questions. We have one for Carola. Carola, in families where there are both home language and English speakers, mom, dad, older brother, sister, what are your recommendations for using each language with infants and toddlers?
So let me see if I can restate the question. So it's about families whose siblings speak English only?
They're both home language and English speakers. So you have both, people who speak like it's Spanish at home, but also others who speak English. So it's a mix. So maybe mom speaks Spanish, but dad speaks English, right? So how do you manage that with infants and toddlers?
Okay, so it's very important. This is that infants and toddlers it's the ideal time to be exposed to multiple languages, but that exposure has to be meaningful, meaning it's mediated by an adult that they care for. So dad, mom, siblings, the relationship is tied to the language. The importance, I would suggest, is consistency. And what the research shows us is that when you're exposed to a second language, so for example, someone who's exposed to Spanish and Mixteco at home, and then they go to their program as infants and toddlers, then supporting their home language the majority of the time is key, but consistent exposure to English is also important, because that's what builds that bilingual mind. So it's not the majority of the time, it's the consistency that's important. So in thinking about a home, there's lots of questions that I would have for the person who asked this question. And it's sort of seeing the dynamics and it's important that all languages are exposed, right, to the child, especially if they're about a relationship with a person and it's tied to that language. And it won't create confusion or anything. Most of the time when we see children, especially our later 2s, 3s, when they start speaking only in one language or saying they don't want to speak in the other language, it's because they're getting messages, things that are said or not said, things that are done or not done, that give them the sense or the message that that one language is not as good as the other one, not cool, or something tied to an identity, which is something that they are developing at that age.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we have another question, and maybe Anna can take this one. It says, I found it challenging when reading a book virtually. Infants and toddlers are not familiar doing this on the screen. And I know you have some experience with your teachers now doing virtual engagements. So.
Yes, so it is a great question. We know with infants and toddlers, their attention span is very short. And so thinking about when they were in our programs, right, what were some things that really, things that they enjoyed a lot? It can be simple as singing, which we know that most children enjoy singing. So maybe doing a quick song that is familiar to them, that they sung when they were in your programs. And if not, then it can be a song that involves a lot of physical movement, which we know is so important as well with our infants and toddlers. So that is one thing that I know some of the teachers that I'm supporting here in Fresno, they're doing, where they're not really focusing with infants and toddlers so much and reading a whole book, but instead selecting very intentionally 1 or 2 pages briefly to be able to dialogue or just connect with that infant, but then connecting with that parent to see how they can continue to support that opportunity that was offered via virtually, via phone, via FaceTime. There's just so many different modalities that a lot of teachers are using and are so creative. And it's all with that mind of supporting our young infants and toddlers. So just being very intentional and connecting with families to see what are some things that the child is interested right now at home, and seeing how we can support it from a distance.
Great, thank you. I have another question here. Should I talk in Spanish to a child that only speaks English?
So what's the goal? And so is it with a child who, so my understanding from the question that the home language is English, is the goal for the parent for the child to be exposed to another language? And if that's the case, that's wonderful. There's great things to do. Now, if this is an extension and this is a child in your program, and your program had already set up an approach, then I guess I would have more questions that to be able to answer that question in a meaningful way. But all children will benefit from an additional language, and it depends on the goal for the family together with you.
Great. So we have another one here. I am running out of other things my kids are familiar with from class. How do I keep them engaged? How do I keep them engaged while introducing new books?
Bring new things. Bring lemon. We have books that we presented earlier today. They're in Spanish, but can be used in any language. And of course, I don't have it in front of me now, but that can be used in any language. And or build, instead of having a story, build a song, and have things that build on curiosity, on a tree, flowers, things in your kitchen, long wooden spoons, right? So try to connect whatever you can find and see, what can I make, how can I evolve this, make this activity something fun that has music, movement, and some kind of extension. Getting all the shoes, when they're older, getting all the shoes of the members of the family, getting the the laces off, creating areas, right? It depends on the age and who else is in the house, because that's the other thing that most of you, as you engage in virtual meetings, it's not just the infant, right? It's usually the whole family. And so how do you engage everybody? But we've, getting all of the different kinds of clean shoes and all different sizes, creating the borders of the shape of the person, a child on the floor with the laces, and then dressing with some of the items that the clothing. You can make it fun and everyone participate using chalk outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anna, did you want to add?
Yes, and so Dr. Carola was talking about the lemon book, and so I have the moon book here in front of me, and this is in Spanish, and so it has a lot of repetition, right? And so when we talk about supporting children, they really, this young, they really don't identify the print, but it's important to expose them to them. And so I'll go ahead and read just this page in Spanish, and then I'll translate it. Luna, 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 sol. And so it's a book that has a lot of repetition, but then one activity also that we shared in the Spanish session was where parents can make their own cube using recyclable boxes.
Ask Carola to end the presentation so they can see it clearly.
Oh, yes.
It's a cube that I made out of recyclable, and I used recyclable paper bags from the grocery store, and I created the same story. And as a family, again, my husband and I and my children, we colored the images that connect with that book. But the same thing could be reenacted with any other book, with any other story that the children and families enjoy doing. And not only that, but it can be images or objects that represent, that have a really powerful meaning to the child and families. And so they can roll it, sing, do a lot of fun things with, again, recyclable materials as well.
All right, I think we have a few more minutes to do a few more questions. Okay, we have one here. How important is it to use both languages, English and Spanish, while reading books with infants and toddlers? Very good.
Wonderful. This is a wonderful question. Sometimes you have books that have both languages in the same book. And it's very useful when that's the case because you have it both in one. Now, what's important is not to read one language and the other immediately after, but to separate. One time, it's when you engage through the story in English, and another one in the other language. And the reason we do that is because if you're offering both languages at once, then the child is not making an effort to understand the language that he or she knows least. So if the purpose is to really extend their language skills, then expand their language skills, then we definitely want to separate both languages. Now, this is through storytelling. This is through an activity that is focusing on language. When the child needs comforting, then it's not about language. And I always just make this disclaimer, then it's about really attending to the child, right? But yes, those books are wonderful. And it's important to read in one language first, and then at another time, you focus on the other language.
And I don't know if Anna if she wants to add anything.
No, I think that what Dr. Carola said, is, what we need to do, where we have to bathe children in their home language as much as possible, but at the same time exposing them to some English as well, right? And so being very mindful of how and when that's going to look like. It takes a lot of planning, but it's not impossible. And one thing that I would like to share right now is, if any of you who are in this webinar are bilingual and you're at home right now, being a parent, being an educator, being a mom, being a wife, being a husband, whatever your role is, and if you speak another language other than English, this is the optimal time to really bathe our young children, our toddlers, our teenagers in our home language if we speak another language, because most of the time, any other given day, they're in school, and unless they're in a specific program, then they're exposed to a second language. Otherwise, the instruction is in English. And so if you're bilingual, just engaging in those rich conversations with your children, family members, regardless of their age, in your home language.
That's so critical. What Anna just said, the home language is the language, the universal language of love. And relationships are tied to that home language. So having this opportunity is an ideal time to really focus on those home, and it might be that there are more than one in one home, and that is okay. That is the language of, or the languages of that family.
Great. Well, we could, stay here for hours and hours talking with you too. So, but it's 3 o'clock and our time is gone. So, but I want to thank you so much, and also remind you that our next webinar is going to be about bilingualism. Probably it's going to be at the end of May. We will be sharing the information with you as we have more details, because I know that there's a lot of questions around speaking two languages at home. And as Anna said, this is a great opportunity for parents at home to practice your home language and endorse it. I am bilingual too, and I see that my kids want to speak Spanish more now than ever. So we want to thank Carola and Anna again, and want to thank you, all of you who attended this webinar today. Thank you for all your hard work, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Adios. Adios.